Well, the well-known DeSoto Speedway in eastern Manatee County has been sold. YouTube star Cletus McFarland is the new owner of that property.
Behind the roar of engines and the laughter echoing through the grandstands, something unseen had already begun to unravel. On that November afternoon in 2020, the Freedom Factory felt alive again. Smoke hung thick in the air. Fans leaned forward in their seats. A stripped-down hot rod rolled into the burnout pit, its engine screaming for attention. For a brief moment, it felt like victory. Then, everything changed in a heartbeat. The hose didn't just fail, it ruptured with force. Superheated coolant exploded outward, not toward the driver, but into the stands. Cheers turned into screams. Confusion gave way to panic. What was meant to be a celebration of horsepower became a moment no one there would ever forget. That instant marked more than an accident. It marked the beginning of a slow, quiet collapse that would follow Garrett Mitchell long after the smoke cleared. Long before that day, Mitchell had built something rare on the internet. Known to millions as Cletus McFarland, he wasn't just another car YouTuber. He was approachable, laughing, reckless in a way that felt harmless. His rise didn't come from polish or perfection, but from authenticity. He played the part of the guy next door who somehow got access to louder cars and bigger toys. Fans didn't just watch him, they trusted him. That trust carried him far. As subscriber counts climbed into the millions, the persona became a brand. Jokes masked pressure. Humor softened criticism.
And when Mitchell announced he was buying a long-abandoned speedway in rural Florida, it felt like the most natural evolution imaginable. The Freedom Factory wasn't just a track, it was a symbol. Proof that internet fame could become something permanent, something real. But permanence comes with weight, responsibility, consequences that don't disappear when the upload ends. The incident in the burnout pit shattered the illusion that this was all controlled chaos. A young fan, seated in the wrong place at the wrong moment, suffered injuries that would change his life. Hospital rooms replaced grandstands. Surgeries replaced applause. And while Mitchell was visibly shaken, grief alone couldn't undo what had happened. In the days that followed, silence grew louder than any engine. Online discussions spiraled. Questions surfaced about safety standards, barriers, approvals that should never have happened. Reports suggested the vehicle involved had already shown signs of mechanical trouble. Public speculation grew over whether warning signs had been ignored. Nothing was officially confirmed, but the narrative was shifting fast. Mitchell tried to hold the line. On his main channel, the familiar smile stayed in place, but elsewhere, the strain showed. Comments were disabled. Explanations felt guarded. The carefree tone that built his empire began to fracture under scrutiny.
The Freedom Factory, once celebrated as a passion project, was suddenly being described in darker terms by critics who had never set foot inside it. Then came the lawsuit. Legal action reframed everything. What once felt like an accident was now being examined through the lens of responsibility. Allegations of negligence circulated widely. Claims about insufficient barriers, inadequate requirements, and unsafe approvals dominated conversations far beyond YouTube. For Mitchell, it wasn't just about money, it was about identity. He had invited people into his world, and someone had paid a devastating price. Behind the scenes, guilt settled in heavily. He paid what he could. He pushed for changes. New rules, new inspections, new barriers. Insurance costs surged overnight. The Freedom Factory survived, but the innocence was gone. Every event carried a shadow. Every cheer echoed with caution. And while public pressure mounted, a far more ruthless force was closing in quietly. The financial reality of 2020 was brutal. Mitchell had poured roughly $850,000 into the speedway, liquid cash, credit, everything he had. Then the world stopped. Lockdowns froze events, gates stayed closed, revenue vanished. YouTube advertising slowed as brands pulled back. Algorithms shifted. The tire smoke that once fueled views was suddenly less desirable than talking heads in quiet rooms. Mitchell didn't retreat to luxury. He stayed, alone. Sleeping on an air mattress inside the infield, the racetrack became his home, his burden, and his prison. He cleaned bathrooms, managed security, answered emails, paid what bills he could. Each day, the facility sat empty, draining thousands just to exist. Stress stopped being theoretical, it became physical. Anxiety crept in, breathing tightened. Relationships strained under uncertainty. Planning a future felt impossible when the present was bleeding cash. And in the middle of that chaos, one mistake sent shockwaves through his entire life. A payment to the federal government failed. Bouncing a check isn't unusual, but bouncing one to the IRS is something else entirely. Fear settled in instantly. The idea that everything he had built could be seized was no longer abstract. It was real, immediate. He described the feeling later as being trapped, boxed in by fences and asphalt he couldn't escape. He couldn't sell the track. No one was buying. He couldn't run it. Regulations wouldn't allow it. He was stuck inside the very dream he had chased so publicly. The Cletus persona vanished in those moments. There were no jokes, no bravado, just a man staring at numbers that refused to turn green. Eventually, he clawed forward. He diversified, took stakes in other businesses. Slowly, as restrictions eased, fans returned, events resumed, money began to flow again. But trauma doesn't disappear just because the lights turn back on. It changes people. It rewires priorities.
For Mitchell, survival came with a cost. The need to never fall that far again became all-consuming. Bigger events, louder engines, faster speeds. Each upload needed to outperform the last. Stability felt fragile. Adrenaline felt reliable. And so the risks escalated. Cars flipped, engines detonated, a promote build exploded, sending debris flying and tens of thousands of dollars disappearing in seconds. A Camaro ended upside down during a burnout. Each incident was brushed off publicly with humor, but patterns were forming. Danger wasn't an exception anymore. It was a constant companion. Then Mitchell looked upward. Aviation promised something different. Freedom without fences. A new frontier for content. He invested in a private airfield, branding it as another playground where limits didn't apply. But the sky has rules that don't bend easily. After a crash during a routine maneuver, regulators stepped in. Audits followed. Inspections multiplied. Lawyers got involved. Compliance costs soared into six figures. Operations stalled. Assets were sold just to keep things moving. The airfield, meant to symbolize ultimate freedom, became another financial anchor, dragging him down. And then came the silence. Mid-flight, alone, the engine failed. In that moment, there was no audience. No camera could capture the weight of gravity taking hold. Emergency procedures replaced instinct. Seconds stretched into eternity. Somehow, he landed safely, physically unharmed.
Bacakan dengan suara tegas, formal, dan tempo sedang. Jaga intonasi netral seperti pembawa berita televisi. But shaken in a way humor couldn't mask. In the video afterward, caution was preached. Lessons were shared. Yet actions told a different story. Surviving the scare didn't slow him down. It seemed to convince him he could survive anything. So he returned to the ground with something to prove. Professional racing isn't YouTube. It doesn't forgive inexperience. In early 2025, Mitchell entered the ARCA Menard Series at Daytona, stepping into machines weighing thousands of pounds, traveling near 200 miles per hour, inches apart. This was no skit, no controlled environment. During the race, chaos erupted. A slight contact at that speed is unforgiving. His car lifted, air caught underneath. For a moment, he wasn't driving anymore. He was flying. The impact with the wall was violent. The stadium fell silent. Cameras waited for a sign of life. He walked away, saved by modern safety engineering. But the crash left marks that weren't visible. He joked afterward, using humor to deflect fear. Yet later admissions revealed the truth. The incident unraveled him. Mortality had finally broken through the armor. Critics grew louder. Veteran racers questioned his approach. Forums filled with warnings that spectacle was overtaking discipline, that content creation and professional motorsport don't obey the same rules. Another wreck followed at Charlotte, this time involving the pace car. Embarrassment layered onto concern. At some point, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Engines.
Airplanes, race cars. Each escalation carried more risk than the last. Each survival reinforced the cycle. Fans were split. Some admired the resilience, others worried aloud. Insiders whispered that adrenaline had replaced balance, that danger had become necessary to feel normal. The question lingers quietly, unresolved. Is this the cost of chasing freedom without limits, or the price of feeding an algorithm that rewards spectacle over restraint? Is Garrett Mitchell pushing boundaries, or being pushed by the very success he built? Behind the jokes, behind the smoke, behind the speed, a deeper tension remains. Not one of fame or money, but of survival. Because when the cameras stop rolling, the risks don't disappear. And eventually, every escalation demands an answer.